Welcome to another episode of Between Cast Fishing Podcast. I'm your host, Collin. We got another exciting episode for you today here. We got my buddy Josh from back at home down in Massachusetts, who's now a transplant of Louisiana. So he's going to come on with us today. We're going to talk a little bit about the how our decisions go out throughout the tournament day, and I'll let him do a quick introduction of himself. Go ahead.
Hey guys, Josh Cotier. Recently just moved down to Pierre Part, Louisiana. Kind of been on hiatus from fishing the last couple years, but finally in an area where I'm comfortable, just kind of get it back on track and get back into the tournament game heavily. Uh, Got a pretty good resume fishing the nation out of Massachusetts. Going to be doing that again. The regionals, BFLs, and stuff. And really focusing on learning Toledo Bend the best I can this year. And the weather's a lot nicer here. There's no snow.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, I was looking out the window today, and we had you know, we've had like 2 feet of snow up here in Vermont, and we just had a thaw, so everything's iced over now. It froze back up, so we're the same way up here, getting ready for some warmer weather. Um, so explain to me how it works in the nation for those that don't necessarily have a ton of exposure to it.
Yeah, it's basically the grassroots form of competitive fishing. It gives a weekend angler, still a platform to compete on. It does vary state to state for sure in terms of like qualifying for a state team. A state team gets an automatic entry into regionals, but I'm pretty sure from our last meeting in my new club that most of the regionals don't fill up fully. So I think as long as you're a member, you still have a shot of getting in. I think it's just a prioritization of like if you're on a state team, you get early invitation, so on. Make sure you get in. Um, but then from there, your regionals is what's going to qualify you to go to the national championship, as well as I'm pretty sure in your state they now do, depending on capita per state, each club can send X amount of guys like directly to that national championship. And I think a lot of guys have discriminated against the nation and the platform because of some of the changes, but um, I've always heard the term. I think it's Pangrac who throws around the most. It's like you can't win it if you're not in it. So I mean, despite the heavier boats in the field, I mean, it doesn't really matter. The quality and talent of fishermen, especially these days, he's still going to beat some of the best people around to get there. So I mean, it's still earned. And again, if you're not getting there, you're not going to have a shot at winning. And I think now where social media and where the internet is, which is kind of what brought fishing out of it for me for a couple of years, is just everyone's a keyboard warrior now. Everyone's a pro. Everyone's on a pro staff
Yeah.
on Facebook fucking profile. But from traveling around, fishing some opens, and having roommate and traveled with some guys who have made the elite series. I mean, it takes a lot of work, and a lot of these college guys are obviously finding huge success. But like, what they don't get is like when going through college, these guys, I know a few of them, like they just live and breathe it, man. So like when you're fully immersed in something, that's the only way you're ever going to find true success in it. So again, like I see a lot of the college guys getting hated on the internet, and obviously we're not going to get in the live scope, but like it takes you fully have to immerse yourself and apply yourself, and I think that's kind of the tipping point of why so many maybe like the older heads, so to speak, are upset because I mean I'll be the first one to tell you I was used to finding success out of Massachusetts off of just showing up and fishing and just covering a lot of water, and even at the nation level
Mhm.
that's out the window now, man. These guys fish so much, they practice so much, and they take the time to make themselves better. And I think some of the generational talents before us were just so naturally talented that they could just go out there and go through the motions and be successful. But the nation's the only thing that's really going to give someone who really only has their weekends to spend to qualify for the elites. I'm pretty sure like you coming through second or third, like there's classic berths there now. So like if you want to get in the elite series or you want to fish a classic or you want free entries to the open, I mean, if you can't take 9 weeks off a year to go fish the opens and stuff, the nation's the only way to do that.
So how it so you spend what do you think the difference between someone who is traveling for tournaments every week and the local guy? Like you fish a lot of these like the BFLs, right? Where it's a mix of guys coming down
Yeah,
from wherever and half the
local.
field's local sticks.
Yeah, which I like it being a mix because I think it's what keeps the point spread overall. Because in reality, if you're traveling to say fish a whole division of the BFLs, you're gonna have local talent at each one. People call them jackpotters, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I grew up fishing where that's how it was. Everyone had a home lake, everyone had a place they're good. Um, New England's much different than the rest of the country. I'll tell you that right now. I think what helped me a lot was traveling a lot as a co-angler in the nation and fishing opens. You're going to learn more from people's mistakes sitting in the back of their boat than you can even teach yourself putting the time in. Uh, but with the BFL, it's split. If you're a traveling guy, you're going to come in, put a few days of practice in probably, even if it's a 1 day tournament. Most people, obviously, if you're coming from another event or you have prior obligations, and I'm sure there are guys who are just showing up blind, so to speak, that day to win that tournament. But it's a whole different stress level of like traveling and you have further expenses, and if you're a blue collar, obviously not just spending the money on the tournament and the traveling and the biggest freaking expense now at tournament fishing is gas for almost anybody. Your truck's getting 12 miles a gallon, 10 miles a gallon, the boat's even worse, you get lodging. Um, and I think a lot of that comes down to one thing I've personally had issues with in the past is just like you can be like great friends with people and like have no problem traveling with you, and then like you get a house of like five, six guys together, like it's really you think you know people, and like it's really hard to have like five, six guys and like gel, and that's when people's personalities you can get along well, but then when it comes to competitive fishing people practice so different and like I remember traveling with guys before and well the last big regional that I got a top 10 in, like I saw the forecast and I knew day two and day three were just gonna blow. So like I never even put a rod on my deck for 14 hours on day one, and you get back to the house and guys are like, how many did you catch? And I was like, dude, I made one cast and I caught a 514. And I literally threw the rod back in the rod locker and put the boat on the trailer, and like guys are like, you people think you're lying, and I was just like, dude, I just wanted to see as much water as I could that day when the wind was down and I could actually drive around. Um, so everyone has their own individualized approach to practice, let alone, game day, day one of a tournament. Um, so yeah, when you're traveling, you're gonna fish a tournament like the BFL. I think the biggest thing with the BFL is like you have to swing in a 1 day event. There's no in a multi-day tournament, the saying I always say, like you can't win it on day one, but you can definitely lose it. You know, um, you can strike out on day one, and day two and day three don't matter because you did so bad on day one. But with a BFL, that's really kind of out the window. You'd put all your eggs in one basket, and I mean you're looking for those 5 bites that day, and I think that's the biggest thing is you're going to be a lot realer with yourself. The time is more, it's more critical of your decision and timing because you're not, I've been in positions before where like I didn't execute perfectly on day one, but overall, hindsight's 2020. I knew my timing and execution. I could refine that for day two, and that's how you start moving up the leaderboard, in a multi-day tournament. But with the BFL, man, it almost demands perfection in this day and age because these guys are just they're so good. I'm looking forward to fishing. I didn't get into the first Cowboy Division One on Toledo because I was just in the process of moving down here. I really got back down here last weekend from Massachusetts, clearing out my storage unit. I'm probably going to do one of the ones on Sam Rayburn, but again, I got the state qualifier and the regional and the BFL on Toledo. I'm just really, that's the closest place to me. It's like 4 hours from where I'm at, so it's basically like what used to be a Champlain trip to me. Um, so instead of like spreading myself
Sure.
out way too far, I'm just trying to spend every weekend I can on Toledo Bend.
So when you're looking at these tournaments, you're looking up at Toledo Bend now. How much time are you putting into the pre-tournament preparation? And what does that look like for you?
But as of right now, the extent of it's just map study. I know a lot of people like research past tournaments of like what's winning and what areas are doing good. I do that too a little bit, just especially in a place like there that I've literally never been. I always kind of like to just do it on my own. Obviously, you hear about, on big lakes like that, what creeks, what arms, what branches are notorious in. I just think if you're trying, when you try to duplicate what other people find success in, it really works for me. Every time I've done well fishing, I've kind of done it on my own. I mean, obviously, sometimes you're going to fish quote unquote community holes. Um, but right now, it's just map study, Google Earth, contours. I guess the hard part for me is like I know how a fish in, New England on a natural lake would transition, when crawfish are coming out of hibernation. But once you're dealing with shad, it's a whole different thing. That bait migration is everything. And I know a good bit about it, but at the same time, it's overwhelming because like it kind of sets in. I feel like when you look at a place like that and you realize how much standing timber there is and how different it is, I'm like used to being able to like say, like a Webster Lake in Massachusetts, you can look on there and tell what's going to be good at any time of the year. And I don't have obviously the experience down here, so maybe it's just a lack of confidence at the time. But like I kind of was looking over the contours last night. Actually, I was doing some Google Earth map study for a club tournament next weekend, and it's just like it's super overwhelming. But I kind of like it, man, because it's putting the fire back under me. It kind of like I was so burnt out on fishing and the drama and all that. So I think now I'm like so much happier in my personal life. And I'm like ready to get back into competitive fishing as much as I can. I'm gonna slow roll into it this year, and then next year I think if everything goes well, I think I'll be happy where I'm at in 2027, no doubt.
Yeah, man. What? How much time are you spending as far as I know? Obviously, you just moved, right? So there isn't a ton of that history. But in the past, how much are you using current conditions versus your history as far as where you're going to start your tournament day?
A lot actually, because I think on like a lot of people stick very strict to what they say they find in practice up to the tournament. I'd like to think I fish a little more like free decision wise than that. So I mean, it's a mixture of everything. Your practice right before a tournament's going to show you probably better off where the population of fish are. But I mean, I've had so many tournaments, even at a local level, where like you throw it all out the window at 12:30, and you're just like, I got to go and do this, and then next thing you know, 20 minutes later, you got 18 pounds in the box and 12 casts, and you're kind of just like, okay, that's when your intuition kicks in. And I spent a lot of time talking about that with guys like Jason Bacon and Jim Gilday, where like the worst decision I think intelligent people in fishing make is like they overthink instead of just doing following your gut. You're like, when you start thinking about your decision making, I think, I think that's when it starts going downhill and the wheels start spinning. Like, when you're making good decisions, you don't think about it. You're just throwing the rod down, strapping it up, and firing up the engine. And like, you get to the next spot and you catch a fish. And if you kind of think back about it, you don't remember making that decision. It just happened. So I think a lot of, for me at least, anyways, and I know there's some people that can relate to it too. I think it's when you start second guessing yourself, it doesn't ever work for me. And I know it doesn't work for a lot of other people. That decision making has to be natural gut feeling. Yeah, so I mean, if especially when things are
Do
going
you
down. Sorry, go ahead.
do you think a lot of that comes from just the amount of information we get as anglers now, where you have a couple of screens in front of you, you're seeing a map, you're seeing a 2D, you're seeing a forward facing, a 360, you have all of these different apps, you're worried about all these different conditions, everyone around you, and just that overwhelming load of information. How do you think that plays with that decision making?
100%. Especially with scope now, you see the body movement and the behavior of fish now so easily with scope. It's that probably factors more into my decision making now than anything. Like even if I'm fishing shallow, like power fishing, how I grew up fishing, I keep my scope kind of like 45 out off the bank because it's free information. Why not receive it? I
Hmm.
can think that, yeah, a lot of people probably don't excel with too much information. I think, you gotta be able to refine all of that. And I think what I kind of struggled with the last 2 years too, not that I was like fishing on a higher level, was just like I got good at scoping, but then it was like just so hard for me to like bounce back and forth between scoping and that information because it's like I know I can do it, but then like the second it doesn't work out for 30 minutes, I'm back at the bank or I'm just, fishing old school, power fishing shallow like I like to. But there's a lot of information now. I mean, I don't run anything on my boat other than a scope anymore. Like I know guys got so many, will still run 2D and side scan up at the front and to me it's just with an LVS 34, I mean, that's all the information I need, man. I can see everything. I can see the fish body movement. The side scan really at that point in a real time situation, obviously in practice, side scanning to mark stuff to come and, scope after is different. But I mean, it's just the, I got a 9 inch for waypoints and I got a freaking 12 for scope and I don't have any problem finding success with that on the front of my boat. I mean, everyone's different. I'll probably not this year, but the following year I'll probably run a 360 at the same time. But yeah, that's a good point, man. It's an over. I think a lot of people spend so much time staring at that screen, but don't actually know what they're looking at. And I think that hurts a lot of people out there. And they're just absolutely like numb to the reality that they're overloading their own brain. I'm not gonna say any. I can just think of a handful of guys that I know pretty well that I grew up fishing with that like when Scope came out, I'd spend time in a boat with them and like they became worse fishermen because they couldn't process the information. They were just there's nothing wrong with Scope and all that. I'm a big supporter of it, but I've watched guys spend their whole tournament day staring at the screen and like they're just not good enough at it. They'd be better off shutting it off and doing what they've done the last 2 decades, if that
Yeah.
makes sense. So to your point, yeah, I think that overload information overload definitely is hurting a lot of people right now.
I know it's bitten me a couple times. You're driving around and I'm doing something, right? And then I see something and I'm like, maybe I should be doing that. And then I try doing that and that doesn't work out. And then I go back to what I was, and you end up doing this kind of scattered brained, not effective use of your time fishing strategy,
That last
right?
regional on Champlain's what happened to me. Like I found them, I could catch like 20 with my, no problem scoping, all practice, and I was cutting the hook off and just making sure these same fish, I could tell how big they were on the scope to bite. And like it just fell apart in the tournament for me in the area I was in, and like I got like 153 on day one, like I pulled in an area and just started flipping grass and caught like 35 fish in maybe an hour. A lot of them were smaller. And then on day two, I made the same mistake. Like I started scoping, and then like at noon, I was like, "Screw this!" And like when the bite window sucked, I pulled up on another grass line, started flipping a jig. And my first two bites were 4 pounders, and like missed the cut for day three. And I was just like, "Man, if I literally just like took a sawzall to the grass on the front of my boat and put a braid and a jig on my front boat, like." Would have would have been in the top 10 no problem. Like I did all that in
Yeah.
5 minutes each day. So I mean, that's a perfect example. It hurt me there too, but practice, it was so good in practice. I was like, I got to do it.
Right, right. So you get through your pre-practice routine, you're on the water, and just like you said, you're on a bite, you have 35 fish in an hour. None of them are the right size. What is your breakdown of do I stay with these fish? Do I leave to find other fish? It's that the ever long question of are you leaving to find fish or not?
Yeah. Um, in a situation, if I know the body of water, I'm gonna think most of the time I'll leave. Places like, Champlain or Webster, areas I know places I've fished your whole life, like, okay, you can catch 10 and the 11th one will, be a big one. Whereas other places, like, they tend to group up by size, if that makes sense. So, I mean, get so much history on so many
Mhm.
places from, like say the James River and up, where like it can happen like that. Where like the James River is a perfect example where like you can pounder, 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 pounder eight. Like it works like that there in some areas. Whereas like Champlain on largemouth, like I just don't find like it works out there. So like but the thing is, if you could still catch 3 pounders, and if you need them, but you're just playing defense at that point. They're not the fish you need, and you know that in the back of your head. But that's a good relation. I should probably apply that going forward. And like Toledo, I don't think they group up like by size. I think they kind of just group up together because I think when the shad's involved, especially like I would say a shad spawn, and I mean I don't know a ton about it, man. I really don't. So if anyone wants to tell me about it, if I'm wrong or right, please do. Um, I think on big schools of shad and gizzards like that, and alewife, I think they do tend to just be all over the place in size. But yeah, I think a lot of times the numbers game doesn't really work out as much anymore. I think in the spring it can, because I think in the spring when everything's going towards the bank, I think that's probably the only time of year where like playing a numbers game really helps. I can think a lot of like really, really early ice out tournaments in Massachusetts where I've found a lot of success. Like right when the ice melts, I think that's when the numbers game really has helped me. And just from like talking to people and going back in, fishing with like Anthony Tempesta, Joe Burchell, and Dan Tavillo, where like we win a tournament and you'll catch 15, 16 keepers, and like second place will have a limit for 7 pounds or something like that. And it's just those early spring tournaments I really do think come down to a numbers game. If you could figure out how to get more bites than everyone else, I think a lot of people really the reaction game sounds simple in the spring, but it's really not. It's more complex than that. Regrinding the same shit, having confidence in what you're doing, and people think of like reaction bait fishing. That's a numbers game. You're just trying to get that thing in as many fish's face in that strike zone as possible. But I think this brings a one time where the numbers game, where the size doesn't really come to me. I think you're just gonna bump into bigger fish.
Do Do you believe that there's any sort of change that you can make on the water, whether that's bait, like the actual lure you're throwing, the color, the presentation, to activate different fish within that school, or is it just this is what they're going on, this is what I'm throwing on, and these are the types of fish that I'm catching?
That's a good question because I think the most recent thing I've learned, especially since I kind of have like last year, I haven't really been taking this seriously. That's something new I've kind of like really, really installed in my head and like live by now is presenting different things. He used to be so just like lock two rods on the deck type of guy. Um, it's kind of strange because scoping kind of is what like did that for me. I found myself fishing more baits having a live scope than I did before, and I think a lot of it is just like seeing these fish react to a bait, and you're like a jerk baiting up north's like the perfect example, man. Like a different profile, a different color. Like they'll go from just like following it sluggish to like next thing you know, they're like you'd be amazed at how much these fish move around these baits up and down around them. They're like spiraling around them, and you'll never get bit sometimes. But then
Yeah.
like Candlewood's a good example where me and Nick P fished a tournament there, and like they were chasing this jerk bait all around, and like you switch to a certain color, and then every one of them was just like a beeline and like a slack knocking hit. So it's one of those things where like if you're throwing
Yeah.
that bait color without scope and you're not getting bit, you'd never know that those fish are actually going crazy over that bait. They're just not biting it, and you make one little tweak. But that's one thing I do a lot now, especially if I'm fishing like an expansive area, so to speak. Reaction baits. I mean, I think I fished a couple weekends ago. It was like the first time I actually like did good down here in South Louisiana because it's just so expansive and it all looks the same. But like I applied that same thing. I went through an area with a spinner bait, got two really good bites, and pulled out a swim jig and went back through and got five more bites. And I was like, okay, this is exactly why I'm doing this to prove like because normally I would make that pass with a spinner bait and say, come back in an hour, get the boat off of that so the fish can replenish. But now what I'll do is do exactly that. I'll make a pass with it, say like on a spinner bait, and then come back through that swim jig, then give it a break, or even come back through with a crankbait. Even sometimes you don't realize you're leaving fish behind, and growing up, that's one thing I kinda always felt like the pros always did, man, is, like, they just didn't leave fish. Like, they left the area when there wasn't any more fish to catch, and, like, and they just knew that.
What is your sign for you that it's time to move?
Confidence. The second I'm thinking about something, you gotta go. If you're like a lot of people, like, will give it 10 more minutes, and I think that's I found myself doing that a lot the last couple of years. Like, I'll give this 10 more minutes, 15 more minutes, a couple casts, and I never used to be like that when I was fishing better. I think the second you're second guessing it, you're already wasting time. The second you're no longer confident in it, because you're just once you say 10 minutes, you've already given yourself a time frame, and that goes back to like I was saying before. Like now you're just going through the motions. You're staring at the clock. You're not fishing. You're like, oh, 10 minutes, and everyone's different. But I find when I pull up somewhere new, I'm like really, really apply myself. I kind of pride myself on my mechanical capabilities with different techniques, and like when you can tell you're focused and you can tell you're doing what you need to do, that's what you need to be doing all the time. And I just you find yourself being complacent, a lot of times. And when you're just like, well, I know they were here yesterday, and I know the fish are here. If scopes taught me anything, is you can be on top of them all day. It don't mean they're gonna bite.
Right. So what's your plan when the plan falls apart?
Oh, put a jig in my hand, go shallow. Most of the time,
Yeah. Yeah.
especially in the spring. Um, I probably finesse fish a lot more than people think I do. Big drop shot guy for smallmouth and largemouth. I found myself a lot of times like, you know, I feel like I can always catch as many fish as anyone else. It's just been like a size issue. Like, it's a couple places in Mass that like are the same way all the time. It's like, it's this same age old thing you always hear. Like every guy in the top three would be like, "Oh, I had 5 bites today. I had 6 bites today," and I'm like, "These guys have 13, 14 pounds." It's like, dude, I caught literally 40 keepers today, and I have 7 pounds. Like what? Like so the numbers game. That's
Right.
just sad. The spring doesn't always work. I'll probably a jig on hardcover, and a 4-inch Nico if it's going bad. If I'm really not, if I'm like not comfortable, my safety where I'm gonna feel comfortable is in grass. I like grass fishing. I feel like if I can get around grass, I'm gonna do good. I feel like I can read grass, whereas most people just see a flat of grass. I feel like I can read grass pretty well.
How are you resetting, I guess is the right term for it. Resetting after either a bad call, lost fish, right? Something not working out like you thought it was gonna.
Yeah, tough man. I think a lot of you wants to just like keep fishing, and I think that's how you have to be. It's just like you really I've lost fish before where I thought it cost me the tournament, and two casts later, you get a bigger one and you end up winning that tournament. And if you can, you gotta block it out of your head. You gotta keep going like it never even happened. Um, I find that tougher in team tournaments sometimes too, because obviously when you got someone to talk with, that's not just say like a coin who you get a draw with. But I think a lot of that's too. That regional in Champlain again, like I freaking hung one of the biggest fish I've ever hooked on Champlain up in a freaking dock, and like it's like you got a guy in the back of the boat screaming like "Go go blah blah," and it's just like it starts, that hurts you too, and then the guy just like never let it go all day. This is like like 7:10 in the morning, and
Yeah.
like every 30 minutes, I feel like he brought it up. He's like, "Man, just imagine if you had that one," and I was just like about to like jump in the back of the boat and go up. But I truly
Yeah.
believe anything happens. You gotta just act like it didn't happen. And one personal thing I've found is like when stuff isn't going my way, I would like drive as fast as I could to the next spot, and I'd like show up to that spot like all worked up. And it was like the worst thing I could like do for myself. Cause I'd be like too hyperactive. I'd get too close, try to do too much. So like one thing I really try to do now is like if I'm making a boat run after a bad decision or like a lost fish or a mistake, like the 15, you don't realize how much you can do in 15 seconds, and 15 seconds isn't really that much of a time. So like Now, if it's going bad, like if pulling into a new area, like really just try to like, don't do anything that's gonna hurt yourself. Like take your time. If there's no one around, like idle up, troll up. Fishing is all between the ears upstairs, so I think, you're only gonna fish as good as whatever mental index you're at that place in time. And, it's so easy to spin out there, man. We put so much time, effort, and money into this, and when it's not going your way, it's really easy to lose confidence. It's really easy to get mad, and so I think a lot of what I'm gonna try to do this year is fishing goes wrong more than it goes right, and you got to realize that. So you got to work on your mental capability to say la vie. It didn't happen, and even if you know it didn't it happened, it doesn't matter right now. You just gotta have it focus. Just focus, because I think when you're thinking about what happened, you're not focused, and fishing takes a lot of effort, man, to be good at, and I think even everyone like complains about the scopers and stuff like, dude, it's not easy. Like these guys might make it look easy, but it's not. It takes a lot of effort to stare at that screen, be dialed in, changing baits over and everything. It's not shooting fish in a barrel. And I think a lot of that comes from guys fishing on their home lakes or places that big tournaments don't ever happen. And, we can all go to the pond down the street from where we grow up with and smash them. All the same fucking 5 trees that we've been fishing our
Yeah.
whole life. But I think that it's the mental index to me. Instead of freaking out and accelerating the timeline, you gotta intentionally slow yourself down.
Yeah, and that's one of those things, man. It's like for for me, I always think about the easiest thing is finding the fish,
Yeah.
right? The hardest part is getting a truck and a boat to a ramp, to get the boat in the water, to get there and not break anything, right? To not break your gear, right? And all of these other things, to tie the right knot, to have the right line, to make the right cast, just for that one moment for a fish to actually bite whatever the heck I'm throwing them at. So yeah, no, I definitely feel there's a lot of times where even I'm in my own head of just everything else going on around me and taking that moment of just like, okay, we need to get it together here, or else the whole day is going to be lost very quickly.
Hmm. You start getting into that like why me aspect, and then you gotta truly just own everything's on you, and you're gonna lose fish, break off fish, and fish aren't gonna bite more times than they're going to. Anyone who tells you every time they get in the water they smash them, from a tournament aspect. Don't get me wrong. Like if you're going fun fishing, you can especially around your area. If I'm not going to name any lakes, but there's plenty of places you can go over there and put a bass boat in and cream them every day. But you're not ever going to fish for 10 grand there, or more. I think
No.
the mental aspect. I think that's where a lot of like the keyboard warriors come from. Is they don't. They even local club tournaments on smaller places, dude. I know a lot of really good fishermen. They don't fish on a higher level, but I mean, dude, you want to show up to a place like Lake Murray or Hartwell, and like you've grown up in New England, dude. Like Hartwell is fucking huge. It's the most intimidating place in the water, and like if you don't have that mental construct that you're gonna go out put the work in, like good luck to you, man. These places will humble you quicker than anything else. I've been fortunate enough to fish a lot of different places all over the country and learn, and I think what I've learned more than anything else is like you're gonna get your teeth kicked in more than anything else.
That's a hard lesson I've been learning over the past few years, right? Coming from doing the club thing and just the very slow crawl up through BFLs, and
Yeah,
guys will kick your teeth in if you aren't prepared. Even if you are prepared, be
yeah,
prepared to get your teeth kicked in,
yeah,
right? Like you can have the best prep in the world and someone has a better day. It just
yeah.
happens.
Someone always catches them. You gotta get. It's not
Yeah,
like the local level where you got 12 boats and the other 10, 11 guys can do bad enough that you can still win. It's not gonna happen in a 100 boat tournament. That's not gonna happen. 5 guys are gonna crack them that day. Promise you.
what is some of the biggest differences between fishing tournaments as an individual and fishing tournaments as a team? Because I know you have a bunch of experience doing both.
um, it's tough to get along with someone in a boat all day, especially when you mix in practice. Um, I think a lot of it too is like pairing capabilities. think a lot of guys, like me and Joe won that double down on Winnie last year, and I think a lot of that comes. We have so much experience in a boat together, as well as me, like a guy like Anthony Tempesta, and I think why I do so well with those guys is like I grew up fishing team tournaments with Joe off the back of the boat, and that guy's just so locked in. And like, I mean, they don't call him Jay Biggins for nothing. Like that guy finds big largemouth. Don't care where you put him. He gets in. But I grew up fishing tournaments with him, and it was like I knew he was gonna get two big bites every day. So for me, it was just like I'm gonna be in awkward positions all day fishing off the back of the boat, and that's where like I really honed my finesse fishing was just like if I can catch three 2.5 pounders off the back of this boat today, we're probably gonna have 18 pounds and we're probably gonna win. And then I think when I started fishing with a guy like Anthony Tempesta, it was kind of like the thing I could catch a ton of fish and just look at him that day and just be like, dude, I know I'm gonna catch 25 keepers today, so like just like throw this today or throw a swim bait and like just get us like 1-4 and like he knows to just like I think a lot of people in team tournaments and I've been in this situation with guys who have fished like one-off tournaments with is like they're competing on the same water, you're fishing on the front of the boat and in reality 9 out of 10 times I'll take a guy who's blind casting a Ned rig into the abyss off the back of the boat because like even fishing all the opens and stuff on Champlain as a co-angler, it was like, I would just sit on the back of the boat with a 3/4 ounce drop shot and freaking whatever bait on it, and like I would just never stare at the graph. Like guys would be fishing the reefs, and I would just literally just bomb that thing as far as I could in the abyss, and just like do well doing it. I've just had like when you're locked in on like trees or laydowns, and you're good with a jig, and like the guy in your back of your boat's like fishing that same tree. Obviously, anyone can catch them from different angles. It's just like team wise, a lot of guys just really fail at fishing the zone they're in effectively and efficiently. Whereas a team tournament, I mean, sorry, fishing solo, that can change because like fishing like an ABA, like there's no co-angler in the back. I'm not in a rush. I know I can pass through something a couple of times. So I think one thing I personally am good at is like not getting shallow, so to speak, like right away. I'll fish area out a little deeper and scope it because like if there's a tree right up shallow, like I can still get up in there and fish that. Whereas like if you pull right up on that tree and fish the shallow part, you blew up what's in front of it and around it. Um, but like in a draw tournament, like a BFL or something like that, it's different because that guy in the back of the boat, he's not your teammate. He can make a cast in any direction, and I don't care what anyone says about that invisible line. 90% of these guys do not fucking abide by that. I've been more screwed over by a guy in the back of the boat than freaking I'd like to talk about, especially on a national birth stage where it's just like, you're in the top five on day one going into day two, and day two you draw a guy who literally didn't catch a single fish on day one, and like you get a shad spawn going, and like there's a line literally touching your shoulder, and it's like at what point, like I've always done the game with integrity, and I think you can ask anybody that I've always done it the right way, and it's just tough when you're in that position. Like you're in the top five fishing for a classic spot, and a guy who didn't catch a fish on day one's like, from my point of view, doing everything you can to ruin your day. It's like, you tell someone like, dude, I got like a 20-minute window on a shad spawn, then these fish are gone. Like I literally got like 12 casts because I'm getting bit every cast doing it. It's just a matter of size. And like you throw in there and you catch a freaking 3 1/4 on a spinnerbait, and there's literally two fives trying to eat the blades off your spinnerbait, and then the guy in the back of the boat like is casting on top of your fish that's jumping, and he hooks that five, and it's just like at what point are we gonna allow physical violence in bass fishing?
Right.
It's you got to think about that when you draw a guy like you don't know him from Adam, and like I've had awesome guys who you can learn from and do that, and I've also had the two biggest shots I've had to make it anywhere just be I always just blame myself, but like what are you gonna do? Like you can't protest these guys, you can't do anything about it, and like it's just that's what makes it tough in a single tournament. So like I think you gotta deal with your anxiety more than anything else in a fishing team tournament or sorry, fishing solo opposed to a team tournament.
Talked on it a little bit on the show as well, just like the co-angler, boater.
Yeah.
It's there needs to be like the I'm gonna call it professional courtesy in certain situations, right? Where you're fishing for a classic berth, right? And like I'm putting the rod down. I'm gonna sit on the back of the deck. You're gonna do your thing for a few minutes, and then we can move on with our day, right? And
Exactly.
vice versa, right? If I pull a co and I'm dead last in this tournament, and they need 3 fish today to win a check, guess
Yeah.
what? We're gonna go find 3 fish, right? It's just
I
where
championship a few
so
years ago. I did that. I was like completely out of the cut, and I knew I was. And the guy Drew was right there, and I was like, he's like, "Can we go fish that tree?" I'm like, "Yeah, trolling motor in backwards." He's like, "You sure?" I'm like, "Dude, I'm out. Like, honestly, I'm out of the cut. Like, let's get you some fish." And sure, there's some, people like, "Oh, that's unfair," because guys will like help out a co-angler just like that. But I'm like, if you're complaining about someone helping out their co-angler, like it really, that's one thing that aggravates me because I just spent so much time in the back of the boat doing it the right way, and finding success doing it the right way that like it. I think about all the times I'm dealing with bullshit out of the back of the boat with a co-angler. Like I don't care if someone's helping someone out because I I'm willing to bet you that more than half the field's dealing with a shitty co-angler. Like I'll stand by that.
let's talk about some post tournament stuff. You weigh in. What do you do to evaluate your performance at the end of the day? Do you have anything where you sit down and say, "Hey, this is what I did good. This is what I didn't do well."
Um, Actually, one thing I started doing kind of the last 2 years, mostly like when I'm fun fishing, is like I'll just take my iPad, and this isn't tournament related, but like I just watch the video of me fishing, and I go back and actually been able to find some mechanical mistakes, and like, when you get bit and you're like, how did I lose that fish? But then when you go back and watch it on video, like sometimes you're like, well, that's exactly why. Um, Tournament wise, I think most of my reflection is going to be timing and decision making. Um, I never really worry about catching fish in a tournament situation. I just focus on like fishing clean, making good decisions, and having your timing be right because timing's most of it. Weight wise is tough. In a bigger tournament, you're gonna see where say you weigh in a 2-2 and you lost one that you don't get a confirmed weight on, but like it's like a 2.5. But there's just so many. I think of dozen plus tournaments where like you jump off a three and it was the difference between I'm outside the check line and the difference between that and putting 2 grand in my pocket. And after running around on a lake for a week, 2 grand's a lot of money. And it's no secret that most
Mm-hmm.
of the guys are freaking fishing for checks just to get to the next one, man. It's the reality of the game. No one likes to talk about it. Even at my level, like I'm not a pro or anything, but the amount of sponsorship money that's just disappeared. Deals gone bad, people lie to you, the amount of I used to get a decent chunk of money to fish with every year, and that's all out the window now. And I know a lot of guys fishing the MPFL and the Elite Series next year, and I'm not going to mention any names, but it's the same thing. People want to sugarcoat it. And who was a guy who went out actually, and he said it recently, talking about the money. One of the elite guys saying he didn't get a lot of sponsor money, but that's it, man. I think post tournament, you're looking at mistakes that literally, at the end of the day, like I don't want to say we're fishing for money, but I think that's the money comes into it post tournament a lot for most people. I think because like when man, you got a 14-hour drive home and you're just still banging gas in the freaking truck tank, and you're just literally thinking about a 2 3/4 pound fish that cost $2,800. Man, it really fucking it
Yeah,
really starts to
yeah,
stink. Um,
yeah. Makes a huge difference.
I think I've got practice has probably been the one thing for me, like post tournament reflection, I've like had the hardest time with recently because I used to be able to like just drive around and look and kind of know where I wanted to be, and I think that's kind of changed now. I mean, I don't know if it's scope or just the level people like we were saying before. I think the level these guys compete at now is just so high. They put so much effort into it. I think you really can't just you can't go through the motions and just look around and practice anymore. That's one thing. Like I'm going out to practice for my club tournament tomorrow. any other time before, I wouldn't really try to catch fish, and like I'm gonna try to catch them tomorrow because it's a confidence thing, you know. I used to be able to just go through the motions and have confidence, but I think, especially now with the club I'm in now, these guys are absolute freaking hammers. I mean, my club's got like I think like 12 guys that have gone pro out of it. So like every weekend's like it's good for
Nuts.
me to learn. So like I gotta take it seriously. Tomorrow's kind of the first day back in the saddle really for me. So I think post tournament wise, I think I failed a lot in the last year and a half in practice. I think my failures came in practice, not so much in the tournament. So honestly, I think if it comes to looking back after a tournament, I need to practice harder. I need to practice better. It's not about just looking around. It's actually about catching fish and dialing in strategically what you need to catch these fish on.
Yeah, man. I like just like you said earlier, so much of this sport is just that mental game of preparation and organization and making sure you're ready at the right time, right? Um, what it what's some advice you'd give maybe a new tournament angler?
Doc talk. Don't listen to the dog talk. People are so facetious and exaggerate, man. I think that's man, every freaking tournament there's always 20 people who won practice. We always say, and that never comes to fruition for a lot of people. And I think and they're not all lying per se to your face. I think a lot of people I find lie to build themselves up before a tournament. I feel like that's just how a lot of people do it. Like they talk to like, last time I'm like, did you scale fish? And they're like, no, I know they're fours. And like I can't there was a tournament like a state qualifier at Champlain that was like that, and it was like immediate post spawn, and like everyone was like, "Oh, I'm on 18 to 20 pounds," and I'm like, dude, I haven't caught a 4 pound smallmouth all week, and I've been catching like 50 of them a day. They're all 3.2, 3.3 post spawn. Well, sure enough, weighing comes, everyone's got 16, 17 pounds. I'm like, okay, like that's I put fish on a scale, you don't really know, but yeah, I would say avoid the dog talk. Um, when you want to get good at something, when you want to learn something, like I would go out in the boat with just like when I want to learn how to skip a jig, like I just put 3 jigs in my pocket and 2 packs of trailers in the other pocket and put that rod on the deck. And when you want to learn something, it's not about conditions or timing. You got to realize you're learning a technique. You're not learning how to catch fish at that point. You're trying to learn the technique. And I think a lot of times what you'll find is like when you're forcing a technique that's not good at the time, and then you get it down and you start actually catching some fish when the conditions aren't right for that technique, you probably find yourself getting pretty good at that technique. If you figure out, if it's not a dock skipping day and you're skipping docks, but you find confidence in it and catch some fish, well, shit, like in the spring when they're actually up there and the conditions are right, you'll be like, okay. And, same, I think the drop shot's kind of like the biggest thing I renowned. Like I didn't still co-angling at the time. I was like power fisherman. I didn't even have a spinning rod in this regional out of Ticonderoga. Like didn't even have a spinning rod with me. And like on the last 30 minutes of day two, I got a 5/0 flipping hook and a robo worm. I took off my boater's floor and I'm like just throwing it on grass, like no weight on it, like 5/0 flipping hook, and I caught 2/4, and I was just like, I need to get good at finesse fishing. So I put a drop shot in the front of my John boat and like just drop shot it and Senko'd for fucking like a month straight on all my local places and got good at it. So and I think guys are so good now, like you do have to master these techniques. There's more people fishing than ever after the pandemic. These fish see so many lures now. I used to have confidence in like if I find them, I can catch them. It's not that easy anymore. Everyone, say the kayak stuff's blown up huge too, which is great. It's getting more guys on the water, but I think the relevance to reality with that is just these fish across the board, across the country, are more pressured literally than ever between the amount of people fishing from COVID and live scope. I mean, these fish literally can't hide. You have to be good to catch them now. You have to be good to catch them. It always takes a little bit of luck, but at the end of the day, you got to put yourself around the right fish to win.
Well, man, that's all I got for you.
All right.
You got anything you want to close out with?
No, just excited to get fishing again. We'll have to do it again sometime this year. Shout out to Cajun Outboards for the
Sure.
job. Place to stay on the river for free for a little while. It's kind of been a huge thing that changed my whole life, but finally like happy, and I can't wait to just like fully get back into fishing and have that be the only thing I focus on in life is competitive fishing.
Yeah, man, we're totally excited up here to see how you do this year. Glad to have you back, and we will for sure get you back on here soon. And maybe we can set something up. I'll come down to Toledo, and you can come up to Champlain. We can all hang out.
I'll be up there in July, no doubt.
Cool. All right, buddy. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Later, bud.